What's up, guys? Ballin with Blizzy back with another video. Today we've got a very special one for you as best ball summer approaches. You guys are like me, you know I'm really into the NFL best ball streets. Super excited for all that to start right after the NFL draft. And for those of you who are super sickos, you'll want to check out this site that I'm about to introduce you to by one of my friends, John Ryan. I know I said best ball summer is about to start, but if you're one of the year-round guys and are playing in the pre-draft contest, the big board, stuff like that, you're really going to like this new suite of tools that John Ryan is going to introduce you today. So I'm going to bring him onto the stage right now, and we're going to take a look at the first introduction of bestballmaniacs.com. John, welcome. Let's just jump right in. Just introduce yourself. Talk to me a little bit about your background in both best ball, the fantasy gaming space, and kind of how you got to the point you're at right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Blaine. Pleasure to be here. Like you said, my name's John Ryan. Really, best ball and fantasy sports betting. That's really the passion what kind of drove this project. And then like past 5 years playing best ball, jumping into drafts every summer, all summer, trying to track drafts. Max and BBM the last 2 years, doing DraftKings the year before. Really just trying to set myself up for the best possibility to like best position my portfolio, trying to keep track of my portfolio. So that was really the idea behind Best Ball Maniacs. Deciding this year really between whether I want to do DraftKings, whether I want to do Underdog, whether I want to do a little bit of both. Both sites have pros and cons, but if I do want to jump back into DraftKings, one thing I've had kind of like issues that have strayed me away in the past is kind of that like post-draft experience. Like you can't name drafts like you can on Underdog. Like just toggling between draft by draft to see your exposure beyond just the exposure tab that gives you that percentage. So that was really the idea behind it, just trying to create a solve for like that summertime best ball experience without, being the in-draft experience, kind of that post-draft while we're in it during the summer. Because while the season itself is great, getting to watch the games, we're not doing much at that point. We're not drafting anymore. So it's really that kind of like June through September. What guys do I have? What stacks am I heavy on? So that really birthed the idea, and that's kind of what we've launched this past month and what we're excited to debut here today.
Yeah, and I know that's not an uncommon theme across the best ball community. It's Underdog for the intuitiveness, the features. Obviously, PD with bbmdb.com has really just heightened the excitement, the sweat around year-long in-season best ball, which was honestly a nice transition for folks who kind of previously were just enjoying it for the duration of the summer through the drafts, and then he really elevated it to that next stratosphere of being able to interact with your teams, get super granular on your data, on your roster constructions, on your ownership during the season, which has made it a really fun experience. And I know, obviously, to your point, that is Underdog specific, kind of just because the way that their back end behaves, the way that they are more kind of customer friendly in that regard. Whereas DraftKings is like, hey, we're, just meat and potatoes. This is where you're going to come to draft. You're going to leave your teams, and there's not much else going on beyond that. So it's really interesting that you bring that up. But with the kind of advent of tools, obviously BBMDB is one of them. We saw a couple others that really kind of elevated. I think the one was called like the Exposer last year, and then we had like Best Ball Fantasy Muse, I believe, was the other one that kind of took the Twitter sphere by storm. So how long has this personally been on your radar, and were you influenced at all by kind of these other tools that have come to the forefront?
Yeah, no, definitely. Patrick Donovan, huge shout out to him. That was certainly one inspiration behind this. Just going from like the early best ball years where, those 3 months in the summer, you draft your teams, you watch the games on Sunday, but until the end of the year, those playoff weeks, like it's not really mentioned. You're kind of self-tracking your exposure if you want to, but some people don't even do that. And then it kind of transformed into this last year, largely in part due to him sweating the playoff weeks, sweating those advance rates on a week-by-week basis. It definitely brought the community together and made it a much more fun 3 months in-season experience. So just trying to, I guess, build off that a little bit, where, it makes all the information that he was able to provide for that in-season experience. If we could get something for, underdog drafters, if you're into that, DraftKings, if we're able to bring that information experience to the pre-draft experience, I think that can just continue to elevate. So yeah, huge shout out to BBMDB. Definitely a big inspiration to this and bringing those pre-draft tools to life.
Awesome. So I know we're going to jump in here in a second. What was kind of the original intent when you brought this to market? When this was first going to go live, what did you want users to be able to do? And then we can kind of move into some of the additional features and all that. But what was kind of the original intent that you wanted users to be able to experience on your site?
Yeah, so I would say it was the idea, going back to your last question, it was kind of birthed like December, around the playoff weeks last year, maybe a little earlier actually, just like mid-season, being able to see that. So the original intent was, how can I make a portfolio tracker that's kind of all encapsulating? I know you, myself, others in the kind of in the day-to-day sweat of things, I've had those spreadsheets in past years, kind of tracking your portfolio your own way. But if we could bring, that was really the idea, can we bring kind of that BBMDB type experience to the pre-draft experience with the portfolio tracker? So that was really the original vision, just an all-encompassing portfolio tracker to, when you're doing 150 plus drafts, you plug them in, you CSV upload your draft so you can have that, one fell swoop, and then you can see, all that information, what teams have I been taken, more so than just, you can do in a spreadsheet, really. I've had the one pick 15 times, I've had Bijan 15 times. Am I taking kind of those common, Brock Bowers at the 2-3 turn also 15 times, or am I mixing that up? So just wanted to give as much information as possible, really for my own self. But, if anyone else in the community comes across it and is able to do that and use this tool and it benefits them, just wanted to bring that option to the community.
Awesome. And I know one of the other things that was kind of the first things that you had online was the ability to draft from any position against just a robot, like a mock, but a mock where live humans aren't going to quit on you, which I know we've had a tremendous amount of experience with, going back to like drafts on Yahoo and ESPN and all that, where you get in a mock and you just can't even finish it because people start screwing up the draft intentionally, or they leave the room, they leave the lobby. So I know one of your things has been just the ability to pick your draft slot and kind of start there. So if you want to walk through that portion of it and just kind of show people out there how they can prepare for best ball summer by kind of giving themselves, opportunities to draft against a smart tool from any draft slot. Why don't you kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, definitely. So kind of the origin of the mock draft feature, which I can walk through, do a quick one, do a couple picks, whatever works. But kind of the origin of that was beyond just like tracking your portfolio. This game is still so new. There's a lot of people that don't know what best ball is, that play fantasy football every year in 10 leagues. And instead of, pitching to your friend who's never played it, hey, drop $25 on this draft, come draft with me. He may not want to waste $25 off the rip, not knowing what it entails, how the draft's different, never seeing those ADPs because they can be wildly different. So having a mock draft tool where you can be like, hey, let's go draft on Ball Maniacs. We have that feature to, actually invite a friend. You can create a draft room, draft with multiple people. Or you can just have him draft by himself, or he wants to practice multiple times. So we brought this feature to life where, you can pick your format. So underdog defaults to that 12 spots, 18 rounds, DraftKings to the 20 rounds. You can pick your draft position. And then beyond new players, if you've drafted 5 drafts to start the year, all from the top of the board, and you want to experience, what the back of the board is going to look like, simulate that experience, you want to try something new. Hey, I want to draft, 4 running backs to start my draft. Can I salvage the wide receiver position if I start running back? I feel like it's a great spot to just try ideas. It's based on ADP, which obviously at this point in the year is a little static, not as much information, but we're going to keep incorporating new information, new ADP as the year goes on to keep that as fresh as possible. So really just a place to experiment. So
yeah,
I can jump into one.
Yeah, I'll let you hop into one. And I just want to point out for, as you said, people who not only are coming to your site for the first time, but maybe have not even entered the best ball space. One of the coolest things about this feature that John's going to run through and you'll see in real time here is the drafts end in like 5 to 7 minutes, because the picks are, besides the user picks, the picks are just generating themselves based on a little bit of ADP and then a little bit of, just variance formula. So it's interesting that you can kind of run through, some of these drafts in each spot 1 through 12, and you might be able to finish 12 drafts before you could finish one real-time draft on Underdog or DraftKings.
Yeah, 100%. It's not going to be an hour experience unless you want it to be. That's a nice thing too. No timer. So if life gets in the way, or you want to think through a pick, or you just kind of want to like view the board, see what could I do here? Should I reach down here? You can take as quick or as long as possible. So it's really your decision there. I know you got to see kind of an earlier version of this mock draft tool. We did put like a 1 second buffer in between picks, so it's not as instantaneous as it once was, but just to like mimic that more real life feel, upgrade the experience with recent draft picks here. So you can still do it in sub 10 minutes, but again, kind of pick your own journey, whether you want it to be just a quick thing you're popping through for reps, or really think about your picks and simulate the real experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And then in terms of roster construction for the auto-generated teams, how does that work? Obviously ADP is the most baked in formula, but it's not always realistic if the guy starts with 4 running backs, let's say. So talk about baking in ADP, but also baking in realistic roster construction so that you are actually getting a worthwhile experience if you're using this mock draft tool.
Yeah, so this was definitely one of the features on site that we put the most work into. A lot of variations of the coding. But basically the logic, we're baking in ADP. So that's kind of like the heaviest weighting. But then also we want positional positional builds. Like we want that to be realistic. So we're not going to have teams draft 9 running backs. We want to stay kind of in the realm of realism, where it's, those 3-6-6-8, 3-6-6-3s, or 2-7-7-2, 2-6-7-3. Just kind of those common, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end positional limits that we're looking for in those 18-20 roster spot builds. So that's a large part of it. Stacking. So if I take Josh Allen here at this round 3 pick, the AI for both computer teams, so these computer slots, but then also when you're on the board, we made it so it kind of builds in that logic that, as you can see, that kind of flashed real quick, but we have Jamar Chase, the draft board, kind of the logic that we built into the draft. It kind of be a helpful tool where, we're going to call out who stacks with who. Obviously schedules aren't out yet, but playoffs, matchups will become a factor. So, when I pick a Josh Allen, their week 17 opponent, their players will be highlighted. And that's going into the computer team logic as well. So someone who takes Zay Flowers at the 4 turn, if they have Zay Flower or if they have Lamar Jackson still available, I know he goes earlier, but just as an example, that weighting will be kind of built into the draft kind of like logic or the draft thoughts for the AI at that pick.
Yeah, and that certainly helps, again, provide that realistic framing of when you're in a draft room, especially as the community has gotten way sharper. I mean, 3 years ago, stacking was kind of still an afterthought. I mean, sharp people were doing it, certainly, but in terms of the entire room kind of staying in their own lane and building strong teams that are well equipped to win, not only that lobby, but win, in the playoff weeks, that we've certainly seen that number skyrocket over the past couple summers. And so I think that's really important, because it kind of would be misleading if you are getting all the benefits of stacking, but then other teams aren't doing that. So I really like that you're pointing out that it's going to be flashed to you, but it's also in the logic of the auto-generated teams to say, hey, this is who we already have. This is who's going to help propel our team forward, because that really does give you the truest sense of what the rooms are going to be like. Again, I would expect the real rooms this summer across DraftKings and Underdog to continue that ascent that we've seen in terms of stacking and just really smart roster construction.
100%. And that's really, like, you can go mock draft on a lot of these kind of industry leader sites, ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, and they have great draft tools as well. But especially for best ball, like, the drafts are just so different. Like, you can go to ESPN, do a mock draft, and it's going to base it on ADP. Probably some roster construction in there too, but they're not taking playoff matchups, stacking into effect. So, if you want to like simulate a real best ball experience, if you're not having, team 2 here take like they took AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, if they're not prioritizing Jalen Hurts at these next couple picks, like, that's just not realistic. Like, if they were to take Drake May here, because for whatever reason he fell in this variation of the draft, like it just wouldn't be a super realistic pick. Depending on falling, like, obviously that's part of the algorithm based on picks. So Drake May would probably be considered in both a real draft with a real person and computer here. But if Jalen Hurts is available, that's kind of the thing we want to simulate instead of just taking best quarterback available. What makes sense for this team? What would a real person do in this scenario? So that's really, what kind of drove the mock draft idea in general. Just kind of going through the portfolio tracker, seeing what we could do with this site in addition. I was looking around. It's like there's no like realistic way to kind of simulate a best ball experience. So if that new person is trying to join, or you're trying to test stuff out, I'm hoping this is a way we can kind of let the community do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll let you make this pick here, but I know when we finish this up, you'll kind of be able to walk through. I assume this will be just added to the portfolio of drafts that you've been doing, and then we can kind of move this forward into some of the things you were talking about earlier in terms of, player combinations. Every time you take this guy, are you pairing him too often with this guy? And that's something that's interesting. I think about my own best ball experience. I've made the finals a couple times, but I've never had the joy of really being in a sweat for the money in the finals. But one of the things I think about is, at what point does having, the strength of week 17 correlation, or, a running back opposite a receiver on the other team in week 17, at what point is that offset by people doing it too much? Because you do want to have the opportunity in a finals week to have a combination that is not as duplicated. Now, obviously, for me, same team, I'll take same team duplication all the time. But where I really try to be smart about it is like who my bringbacks are, or if this is the hot matchup and everybody's pairing these players together, how can I be one player different? Because some of the things that I've noticed as you especially use tools like bbmdb.com is it really only takes a couple players to be different to really elevate you. And I know that is really getting into the weeds, and really it's such a small fraction of the people who with those builds even make it to the finals. So I understand that just through the regular season cuts and through the week 15, 16 cuts, you're gonna really slice down on the number of people who even have those combinations. But still, I think about separating yourself in that week 17 scenario. It'll be interesting to kind of hear your thoughts on how your portfolio looks so far, some of the anomalies that you are seeing, and how that could benefit you this summer in terms of not falling into those traps before you fall into them. I mean, I think that's a great way to use this tool, is to kind of notice your patterns, notice your own user behavior before actual money's on the line.
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, that was a big kind of factor in both the portfolio tracker and then, when you are mock drafting in here, because like doing 150 drafts, it can seem silly to need a mock draft simulator. This isn't like, you have your one home league, you want to practice, get a couple reps in before. That's like best ball is almost reps in itself. But if you're on the clock in one of those real drafts that are counting towards your max, and you're just, let's say we're in this part of the draft and you're high on Jaden Higgins, you're high on, Jaden Reed. So you just click those names, and you just kind of get a habit. You notice you're overweight them. You never take Tyreek Hill, which, probably a good fade. But, in these drafts, you can draft as you normally do, take a Tyreek Hill here. You can take another guy you're fading, whether that be Xavier Worthy down here. You can take those guys and then, see how the draft plays out. And it's like, can I do some thinking? And it's like Tyreek Hill scores 2 touchdowns in week 17, and I never have him. But if I have him with these guys that I take in the top of the draft a lot, maybe that is the guy I need. And, it doesn't ruin how I view this draft otherwise. So you can do that a little bit in the mock drafts. I will pop out of here just to kind of go to the portfolio tracker. But we brought that really to the portfolio tracker too. So I haven't done a ton of big boards or DraftKings pre-draft drafts so far this year. But part of the portfolio tracker, once you have some teams to upload here, we have those actual stack analysis. So, who are you stacking with who? I think I might have one draft in here. Let me refresh this. There we go. 2 drafts in here. So we can get some real data to showcase. So this is one feature I'm going to enjoy. Obviously, with just 2 teams drafted, it doesn't look the best. But kind of your top 20 drafted players. So, the 20 guys you're highest on the most. I know a couple years ago I hit on Kyron Williams as like a big 18th round pick stand of mine. Didn't end up making any finals, didn't end up making, even though I had a great pick in round 18 that I think I was like 34% on. If I had this and I'm seeing, I'm taking him a bunch with, a first round guy who didn't do that great this year, but I'm never taking him with like Saquon Barkley, who I think had a great year that year. So it can kind of just tell you, hey, like my top exposed player is Kyron Williams, which I'm happy about, but I'm taking him like 70% of the time with like Matt Stafford as an example. So as you get more drafts, this will be more useful, just seeing who you take with who the most. Maybe you take a bunch of Kyron, but your 4th best player, also a running back in that same kind of realm, and you never take it with him. What if both hit? Maybe you should, take them both in a draft. So the correlation matrix, I think, is one tool for sure that I'm going to be using a lot. You can see all your teams. So you can go one by one here and just like at a glance. This is going to be huge for DraftKings, especially for personal preference if I decide to do that this year, just being able to scroll and see your teams, name them, so you don't have to just scroll in the app, click DraftKings Millie Maker, and see the teams that way, and then you exit out and it restarts from the top of the list. So you'll be able to see your teams here, build archetypes. Again, early in the draft, so only 2 drafts of data, but as we go on, we'll play a schedule correlation. Once schedules drop, we put in some data so that it highlights which games are in domes, which are outdoor, retractable roofs. I may try and put something to indicate like warmer climate as well. If you're playing in Miami, that's outdoor, but it's not, something to punish like it would be if you're playing in Buffalo or New England. So yeah, that's part of the kind of going back to the original question, who you're taking with who, kind of mixing up your portfolio, taking guys that you don't typically take, even if it's with guys that you typically do take. I'm hoping various tools on the site can kind of help with that and get you out of your habit of clicking the same guys, more so than just looking at exposure and seeing a number. If I take, the 6% exposure blanket of one guy, if I'm taking it with other guys I don't take, that's not really doing me any good. I want to take those kind of few percentages of guys with guys that I take all the time, just in case he's the guy I'm going to need, that carries with the guys I did hit on.
Yeah, now let me ask you this. So in terms of getting teams to show up here, I guess this is a 2-part question. One, are there separate portfolios for real drafts, as you're showing, like real money spent on underdog, versus can you also track a portfolio of your mock drafts? And then I guess part 2 is, for your real drafts, how are you linking the data from underdog or DraftKings to get it to show up here?
Yes, so good question. Originally, the idea was to import your mock drafts into the portfolio tracker that you do on site, just so you can track, I drafted this draft, these players, how did it do at the end of the year? Kind of going back and forth with myself, I decided to exclude them from the portfolio tracker just because I didn't want it to, mess with your overall data. I thought about 2 columns, mock draft, real drafts, but, really, in my eyes, kind of the origin of the idea for the site was to track, the real draft data, how many DraftKings underdog drafts I'm doing, how much money did I invest, who am I drafting, and I didn't really want to mess and kind of, sway that data with mock drafts. So kind of 2-parter there as of now, gonna stick forward with just keeping this real money drafts that you want to import. If you want to import your own manual entry, like if you do a mock and you want to input your mock drafts, it's not going to auto do it, but you can just put 0 best Ball Maniacs mock, and you can track it. So it's really up to you, but it's not going to auto upload once your mock draft is finished. And then once you are uploading, we have 2 options here. So let's say you did want to upload a mock manually, or if you want to upload, you're just doing a couple underdog drafts, you don't feel like uploading a CSV, you can do those manually or as you go. So I took Jamar Chase in that one, picked him, and then it autofills all that rest of the data. So it's got the ADP here for CLV purposes. And you just go down, type in who you picked, it'll auto-populate. I know I didn't take Genty in that one, but just for purposes of getting those in, Blake Corum. So they'll all populate there. We got everyone in the field. If you're taking any guys that aren't in the kind of draft pool for whatever reason, just let me know. I'll be happy to get them into the player pool. But yeah, so that's how you save a draft and upload that manually. We also just this week implemented the feature to upload a CSV, just underdog for now, trying to get DraftKings in there. So we can have those manual or those auto updates be a little easier if you got a ton of drafts that you're trying to import. So TBD on DraftKings, but for now, just Underdog CSV files. And then that'll upload your whole portfolio in here, kind of break up those teams here. Naming purposes, it won't be able to pull in like a custom name, but it will have the date you drafted it and the players that you took.
Yeah, and so no, that's fantastic, and definitely, again, continuing that user experience not only in the summer but just ease of access during the season itself. What are some of the other features that you've implemented or that you're personally excited about? I know there's a number of them, but you can kind of just jump around at your own free will.
Yeah, so I guess to start, everything in our tools, so from the mock draft to we have a custom rankings feature where we can start here. So the custom rankings feature, kind of self-explanatory. We have our player pool. Once that loads in, got a ton of names. So let's say you want to upload your custom rankings to DraftKings, or you just want to make it for your home leagues. You can go in here, move these guys around. So let's say I have Jamar Chase as my 101 this year. We can move him up. And there it goes. So it saves him as our new 101 in the personal rankings. If you ever, you're dragging and dropping, you're just kind of going crazy with it, and then you're like, I don't like how this looks. You can also reset to the default and then restart. So it's one quick button. It'll reset to those kind of like official ADP-esque rankings. We also have, so across mock drafts, like I mentioned, these are projected points based on kind of our player projections admin tool. So as we do our rankings, it's all based on real projections. I can flash that in a moment. But you can also see that on player profiles. So we have a player profile for every guy in the pool. This auto links to your portfolio. So I have 2 teams inputted. I don't have Jamar Chase on either of them, unfortunately. We'll definitely get that changed. But once I do, I'll have my roster exposure, the rankings for our site, so our projections, and then you have your actual. So if you have JSN over them, that'll show as wide receiver 2 compared to the Maniacs ranking of wide receiver 1. And then also the 2026 point projections, which are built from our projections down here. So this is real stat projections, just not throwing numbers to a wall. Receptions might be a little high. I know his career high is 127, so maybe go back to that input a little later. But for the most part, this is all just like based on target share, all those real inputs, how we project Joe Burrow is going to do, how the Bengals are going to do compared to their throw pass rates. So it's all player profiles linked to your exposure, linked to your rankings, and linked to our projected stats. We also have similar wide receivers. I think this is a cool feature for as we get deeper into the summer. So if you're taking Jamar Chase all the time and you have 16% of Jamar Chase, and then you see here you have 4% of JSN. That's something where these similar wide receivers in the first round, do I want to be overexposed to Jamar Chase? What if he gets hurt? Then am I just done for the year? Is not my year, chalk it up. So you'll be able to track exposures to other people in kind of those similar ADP positions, and you'll show recent drafts that you did take them. So if I imported a draft from today's big board, I took Jamar Chase, it'll show that one. You can click on it and then go see the full team.
And can people see the team level projections? I know you said it's all interconnected with Burrow stats, with T. Higgins stats, with Chase Brown. Can people see the full stat breakdown per team, or do they just need to go player by player?
Great question, because that is something I'm hoping to bring as a new tool at some point. So current state, no, but I'd love to bring, that's in the works, to bring kind of like the overall stat projections team by team, so you can kind of see where those target shares lie. And then in future state, I'm hoping next year we can kind of bring this player projections feature to the site itself. So TBD on that, not for this year, but kind of hoping to, if you don't agree with some of these inputs and you kind of want to make your own rankings on, your own inputs, maybe you're a Bengals fan, you're like, there's no chance Jamar Chase gets a 32% target share this year with T. Higgins, and, we're going to run more. You can go in and change that. So we're hoping maybe something for next year, but we'll definitely get the team by team inputs for this year.
That's awesome. Do you want to just I see a coaching impact feature there. I see some other features. You want to just continue to walk through some of the things you're excited about?
Yeah, so those past couple on Mock Draft, Portfolio Tracker, custom rankings, those are really the core features, kind of like the overall original vision for the site, but decided to add a couple things, so can do some just like quick hits on those. But the coaching impacts, kind of built this for myself, to be honest. Hopefully the community finds any value in this, but every summer I'm going through it, and in my mind I'll be like, the Raiders were terrible last year, just not an offense I want. Mendoza, interesting prospect, but am I want to hitch my wagon to the Raiders and taking Genty in the first round and taking Brock Bowers in the second or third round? And then every year there's those bad teams that are projected terrible. I think the Seahawks a couple years in Geno Smith's first year, and then they just have a great season. And if you don't have those guys late, you're just not going to do as well. So a lot of that can come down to coaching. So like, I'm a big Clint Kubiak guy, so we just wanted to bring some of this stuff, just more informational than anything, definitely not gospel, but offensive tendencies in the past for Clint Kubiak. So in the past, he's throwing at around a 57% clip. We have target distributions in his past season. So he throws to the wide receivers a lot, 20% running back target share, pretty good motion rate. So it's more just informational. We have a little, fantasy blurb down the bottom as well for all kind of coaching staffs. But, obviously player personnel impacts this. Is Kubiak going to be able to run the same exact offense with a rookie quarterback and no wide receivers as of now than he was in Seattle? Probably not, but I do think they'll have a little more success with him at the helm than they did last year. So yeah, we have all 32 teams kind of sorted by, new coaching staffs to some newness. And then, the coaching staffs that have stayed exactly the same: Chicago, Minnesota, the Rams. So you can go in, check out your team if you have, any, just like, what is this team going to look like this year? It could look exactly the same, could look wildly different. But yeah, so I would say kind of context is key for all this, but a helpful tool just in case you're kind of forgetting, which OCs where this year. If you're trying to avoid, one of those classic run the ball, swap out your running backs at the goal line OCs, you can kind of monitor this all there.
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly one of the things that I'll be interested in looking at there on your site is the impact of the Seahawks. I mean, you mentioned a bunch of the offensive staff going from Seattle to Las Vegas. I know one of the things that has already been on my radar is, again, taking away nothing from Sam Darnold. He's a Super Bowl champion now. He has resurrected his career, but I personally am having just a little bit of reservations about what that means for Sam, what that means for JSN. I'm sure they're still going to have wonderful years, but you lose Clint Kubiak. He takes, I believe, 6 or 7 offensive assistants with him to Vegas. You don't have anyone internal to promote. You bring in from the outside. I believe their OC is from the 49ers. It's a new tree. It's a new system. It is just another summer where Sam Darnold again has to go and learn a new offense. JSN is going to have to learn new route concepts. And we don't know what this 49ers guy's background is and how that translates to JSN, which I believe he's going like 5th overall suddenly. And so are we pricing him at his ceiling, and we might get, just a slight regression to Kubiak and the entire offensive staff heading to Vegas? That's just one of the things I'm personally curious about and am definitely going to do some digging into myself.
No, 100%. And I mean, that's kind of what this is. You may forget which OCs where. So yeah, a good reminder, they lost not only Kubiak, but Kenneth Walker. So more informational there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know one of the things, if it's interesting to me, or if I have this question, I know a lot of people out there might have this question. You said earlier that this was something that really didn't get any real kind of momentum for you until like the NFL playoffs were happening, which we know was in January. And we're seeing just a number of fantastic, phenomenal tools. You've built this up from the ground, it seems like, in just over 2 months. Kind of, do you have any coding background, or how did we get to this point so quickly in terms of the concept and the not only the concept, but bringing the concept to life here just 2.5 months later?
Yeah, so I have some UI background. So a little bit of, my 9-to-5 job, a lot of content management system work, but didn't have that, actual coding experience. So learned a little bit of it as kind of like a baseline, and then really using AI tools has really been a huge help in bringing this to life in a shorter amount of time than some of these tools may have taken in previous years to kind of bring to life. So yeah, definitely, like any AI guys out there, Claude Code is definitely super helpful. You still need to have, a little insight into what you're doing, what you're looking for, kind of the communication with the AI to kind of translate what you're looking for. But it can do, it can definitely speed up things if you have a little knowledge and kind of an idea that you want to bring to life.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what kind of, I know you said primarily for you until like kind of the word grows about bestballmaniacs.com, but in that perfect world where this does reach, the best ball community, what are you kind of hoping they're going to get out of it this summer specifically? I know you're talking about things that you can add down the road, but just kind of as a starting point for guys like you, like me, hearing about it, using it for the first time, what are you kind of hoping is an optimal outcome from using these tools?
Yeah, I think the two obviously main objectives, A, for myself, B, have like a real portfolio tracker this year where I can just kind of see drafts 1 through 150 plus, and have as much information as possible on those drafts. B, kind of help grow the game, hopefully. So, best ball still probably in its early stages. I imagine there's only more adoption in the future. Fantasy football is still huge. And every year it seems like more and more people are introduced to the best ball game, and hopefully that continues. So if anyone is ever looking for, what it is, we have some content on kind of like best ball strategy as one pagers, and, what is best ball as a one pager, and then, mock drafts. So, if you have a friend who's interested in it that hasn't dipped their toe in the water yet, feel free to send it to them. If you yourself haven't, you're a fantasy football junkie, but you haven't got over to best ball, play a couple drafts. And yeah, hopefully this year can be that summer that you get into a couple, and because it's a fun sweat. So it's something I'd definitely recommend to those fantasy football fans out there.
Yeah, and forgive me if I missed this, and I don't even believe you've said the best part, that right now, at least for this season, all these tools are free. I assume you just need to sign up, give some personal details, your email and such, but everything is free right now. Is that kind of the plan?
Yeah, 100% free. All the tools are free. You don't even need to sign up to do any mock drafts. So again, if you want to hold out on providing any info, it's super simple sign up. Just email password name. No, we're not looking for your firstborn's name or anything. But so if you want to track your portfolio, you do need to sign up. But yeah, mock drafts free. We have a little mini game that you can play completely free, no sign up required. So yeah, hopefully we can keep this free for as long as possible. Maybe some premium tools down the future, but the intention is all these core tools to be free forever.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll be interested in as I, begin to use the site more this summer, as you know, I'm kind of super old school where I've still been tracking all my teams in like the Google Docs, the Microsoft Excel. Shout out Michael Dubner for his sheet. He always does a great job.
100%.
It'll be interesting to see kind of, is this replacing that? Because that, for me, that's a tremendous amount of time. I'm a heavy DraftKings user. And again, as you kind of pointed out, it's a lot easier to get teams auto imported from Underdog than it is from DraftKings. And so I spend a tremendous amount of time each summer just manually entering teams into the portfolio tracker that Michael Dubner offers. And I know there's some really interesting things. Like you can see, he's got like the bar graphs, how many times you picked a guy this summer, 15 picks past ADP, how many times you chose a guy 10 spots ahead of ADP. And, you really can kind of get sort of some granular data. You can see exactly what percentage of players you've drafted from the Raiders versus what percentage of players you've drafted from the Rams, things like that. So definitely, I mean, as you continue to roll out more tools, it'll be nice for people like me who have traditionally been kind of logging a lot of manual entries to just get that data in a lot faster and easier way, just popping on a website, online based, rather than having to open up your sheet and scroll through it and scroll through your teams. So I can certainly see anybody who kind of shares my experience of using those kind of Excel or Google Doc trackers getting a ton of value out of this for free.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, Michael Dubner's tracker has used that in past years as well. Did a great job bringing some of that data point there. Probably won't have everything that he had in there because he did tremendous work with that. So for year one, I think we have a lot of good stuff in the portfolio tracker now. We're still tweaking, as we get real ADP data. Hoping to incorporate that to give some more insights on CLV, stuff like that. But yeah, hopefully, like you said, this just makes it an easier experience, whether you're a DraftKings user or an Underdog user, drafters user. Yeah, just trying to give a cleaner, more efficient way to look at your portfolio, get some insights on it. Just have people, myself included, be more informed drafters for the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in closing, just to wrap this up, I know you're still kind of thinking through your plan, Underdog, DraftKings, a bit of both. Do you just want to just talk about the contest that you kind of enjoy and what you're looking forward to this summer? Anything new that you would like to see? I don't know if you were in the Eliminator Streets last year. I was heavy into that. But just as the community in the space, as you mentioned, continues to grow, continues to roll things and move things forward, just kind of your own personal summer plan, what you'd like to see, what you're excited to play, and any other just general thoughts.
Yeah, still kind of working my own plan out. I think, DraftKings has been back on my radar for this year, especially now with these tools. I've kind of defaulted to Underdog over the last couple of years because, their draft experience is a little better where, I could at the very least name drafts, easily go in and find, if I was looking for a certain one to see if I had an injured player, an injury in camp happens, and I'm looking to see, was that on my favorite team? But yeah, so now that I have this year, some tools and some more, help for the post-draft experience, DraftKings is definitely on my radar. I'll probably end up doing some of both, max one of them and do some in the other contests. But yeah, TBD on kind of the draft plan, but you'll definitely see me in both the DraftKings and Underdog streets this year.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm excited to use your tools. Excited to kind of hopefully bring you on over the summer to do a couple drafts and then look at the portfolio and look at the matrix as you showed. Once there's a larger sample of teams, if you will. So thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it, and hopefully we will have you back on the channel again soon, and we'll do some drafting together this summer.
Oh, 100%. Thank you so much for having me on, Blaine.
Yep. We'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.